Yeah, so on marriage equality, specifically within Australia, I think we have been at a consistent level now, I think, for at least 2 years, where we've seen consistent polling numbers that show that 2/3 of Australians support marriage equality. There are some polls that have suggested that it's actually as high as 3/4. This is something that we know that the majority of Australians want. For us, this campaign is not about trying to sell Australians on this is the reason why we should have marriage equality. The majority of us, the significant majority of us, are on board with this issue. This is something that we know that we want. You know, for the LGBTI community, it's for ourselves. For a lot of people, it's their friends, it's their families, it's their colleagues, it's the people in their local communities. They believe that they should be equal, and they don't understand why marriage equality is being made as much of a political issue as it is. You know, it is the unfortunate struggle, you know, and it's not just in Australia at the moment that we're seeing that. I think Germany has exactly the same example at the moment. It's similar numbers, where close to 3/4 of people within Germany, I think that was research that came out earlier this week, nearly 3/4 of people in Germany support marriage equality. Chancellor Angela Merkel, being a part of the Christian Democratic Union, has very much said outright, marriage equality is not a priority for us. This is not something that's, you know, it's not something that the government is currently working on or wants to see. And, Angela Merkel has said that, you know, her firm position of marriage specifically being between a man and a woman. And it's so incredibly unfortunate to have countries like Australia and Germany where you have the significant majority of people within that country supporting something like marriage equality, and it's just the people in power, whether it be the leaders of the country, the political party that's currently in power, not having that specifically in place. You know, I think certainly the battle for us at the moment is getting the Liberal Party to specifically change their position on marriage equality and how it is that it's actually going to move forward. One of the downsides which we've seen, particularly in the past 18 months to 2 years, is that it's not so much been around debate of whether we should pass marriage equality or not. It's the mechanism of how it is that we're going to do it. There's been no argument whatsoever that's gone, no, the majority of Australians do not support marriage equality. I'm probably going to make a bit of a taboo example here, but the Marriage Alliance specifically came out with polling earlier this week. Their headline was 33% of Australians only strongly support marriage equality. Yet if you actually have a look at the data that's specifically within that survey and has been quoted in all of the press articles, within that data that even the Marriage Alliance has, it still had in there that the majority of Australians support marriage equality. You know, yes to no was still outnumbered 2-1, and that was specifically within polling that our opponents are doing. Surely that absolutely has to tell you something, that the overwhelming majority of Australians support this and that we want action specifically on this issue. And I think even opponents on the no side of this, they're fully aware of this. They're not making their arguments specifically about marriage equality. They're making their arguments about other issues and trying to link it back to marriage equality to try and plant that seed of doubt in people who potentially aren't decided and gone, I might be a bit reluctant to see change because of all of these, you know, ideologies that I'm supposedly hearing about. They have absolutely nothing to do with marriage. This is simply about changing one sentence within the Marriage Act, which allows same-sex couples or anybody, regardless of their gender, to have the right to marry. That's all this is about. And I think the fact that we have been fighting this for, you know, since the definition of marriage changed in 2004 in Australia, the fact that this has been going for such a long period of time and support has just continued to grow over that time. You know, we've now seen polling for 10 years in Australia, which says the overwhelming majority of Australians support marriage equality. 2007 was the first time we saw that, you know, poll where it was above 50%, and it's only kept growing over that time. The no vote has kept dropping over that time. It's, you know, it's 2017. It's time for our politicians to act, and it's time to get this done.
And I think that, Chris makes so many excellent points there, and it is, the numbers of support in Australia now are actually much higher than they were in Great Britain when they made their decision to pass marriage equality through a free vote, which is what should happen here. higher than in the United States when the Supreme Court made its decision as well. So certainly the level of the problem is not with the Australian people. The problem is that we have a political system that somehow, despite public support and ostensibly the two leaders of both major political parties supporting it, has not managed to get to a point where this is passed. So certainly I have great faith, and I've been really inspired by the Australian people that I've spoken to about this issue, and I know that Chris could tell a very similar story, that Australian people are really behind this reform. And the part of the campaign, which has included the gay and lesbian rights lobby under the Equality Campaign banner, we've travelled all over the place, and whether it be Penrith or whether it be the other side of Australia over in Perth, we meet people, everyday people who just gay and lesbian people, transgender people are becoming more and more visible. People realise this is a basic reform about people that they know who are a part of their community, and they just like to have justice delivered to them. And I think that we always think of ourselves in Australia as being a country that really does believe in this idea of a fair go. If you go back to our history, it's been probably the central way that we think of ourselves. And really, the Australian people have delivered on that in this way that we think about LGBTI relationships. So overwhelming public support is there. I think the frustration is there's such a high level of support. Why are we the last developed country, if you want to use that terminology, in the English-speaking world that has not gotten there yet? And the answer is that question needs to be posed to politicians, and I think the politicians need to realise that the movement won't stop and it won't go away, because it is something that touches very deeply at the heart of the Australian community. So it will continue until we get there.
And it is very much, I think, about the Australian community as a whole. I know we've seen some commentary in recent times about marriage equality being an Oxford Street issue, and I think one of the things that the Equality Campaign has been able to do to its credit, particularly in the past 6 to 8 weeks, was going out, and I think they did like 10 or 12 events in regional and rural New South Wales to actually talk about marriage equality. Some of those events were they were beyond capacity because they were so incredibly supportive of marriage equality, and the fact that people were actually coming to discuss this issue with them at a local level. It's something that saw, I think, unprecedented levels of success. This is not an issue which is just specifically about people in capital cities. This is about people everywhere across Australia. This conversation is now being had in regional and rural towns. It's not just it's not just about us in inner Sydney. It's about absolutely everybody, and particularly when you go and visit more of these regional and rural towns, there is more and more growing support. There are more vocal support for marriage equality. If you have a look at electorates, specifically like Gilmore in New South Wales is a perfect example. I think when you've got people like Dawn Hawkins that are specifically in those kinds of electorates, and you're seeing all the champions there with the emphatic amount of work that they're doing Dawn's doing such great things on the ground, and yet you get busloads of them coming to Mardi Gras, and Gilmore for Marriage Equality made its presence incredibly felt there. That is what people in all of these electorates that are doing in rural and regional areas, it's what they are doing, because this issue is incredibly important to them, and this campaign is going truly national. It's reaching all of these different areas, and we're seeing absolutely fantastic results with that.
I think, to extend on that, with the sort of recent sort of campaign that Chris was talking about, just Barnaby Joyce's own electorate, we did a visit in Tamworth, did polling in Tamworth, and a majority of people, even in Barnaby Joyce's electorate, are in support of marriage equality. So at some point, politicians do need to ask themselves, are you representing the voices of your community? And people who vote have a right to have their views represented.